Georgia won the SEC last year despite having a down season. Their offense wasn't as good as what it has been in years past. The wide receivers were a main reason for that. They essentially had bricks for hands. Anytime they were wide open, it seemed like they didn't want to make plays and they didn't want to catch the football. And then their offensive production went down as well because Georgia, prior to 2024, for the last 3 seasons before that, they were top 10 in college football in explosive plays that went for 10 yards or more. In 2024, they fell to 22nd in the country in that department. And the main reason for why Georgia's explosive play production fell down was because the receivers weren't dynamic. How did they fix that problem? They got Zachariah Branch out of the transfer portal, and this was the last thing that Georgia needed if you're somebody that's rooting for the downfall of the Kirby Smart Georgia Empire, because Zachariah Branch is going to fix the biggest flaw that this team had last year, because what he specializes in is being instant offense. That's what he's going to be for the Dogs this year. This is somebody that you don't overthink it. All you do is just put the ball in his hands, and he's a threat to take it to the house for 6 every time the ball is in his possession, because he is the fastest player in college football. And what he does in the open field with the variety of different moves that he can put on guys, he's going to be a nightmare for opposing defenses to slow down when they played Georgia this year. You see, last year, Georgia's offense was predictable because with them no longer having Brock Bowers, you didn't really have anybody that was that dynamic. You didn't even have a Lot McConkey level threat, a guy that could be an elite route runner and be able to create a lot of separation. So that hindered a lot of what made Georgia's offense explosive in years past. With Zachariah Branch, you can get him involved with bubble screens, reverses, jet sweeps. You can throw a bomb downfield 50 yards and he can come down with it due to how fast he is, because this isn't a guy that you want to line up one-on-one with a cornerback and no safety help over the top, because he's just too potent at receiver for you to even want to take that risk. When you have somebody that has this kind of game-changing speed, Olympic-like speed, it completely changes how defenses have to defend your offense. And Zachariah Branch puts so much stress on opposing defenses that it's going to open things up for the rest of these Georgia wide receivers. And when Zachariah Branch was at USC, I know that he didn't have the type of production that you expect from somebody who was a 5-star recruit, but I blame his lack of production on Lincoln Riley not really finding innovative ways to get him the football. Georgia has been well known for producing elite speedsters, such as when they had Miko Hartman years ago. Arian Smith came up with some big plays during his course of his Georgia careers. Georgia's used to knowing how to get the best out of guys that have this kind of skill set. But Zachariah Branch, there still is a lot of untapped potential that hasn't really been reached with him because there hasn't been a coaching staff that's been able to get the most out of this guy. Look, I know that the biggest enemy in the eyes of Georgia fans right now is Mike Bobo, and I understand your gripes with him, but there's only so much criticism that you can give a guy when the wide receivers just can't make plays. They can't separate. Georgia's receivers, simply, to be honest with you and to be nice about it, to keep it PG-13, they weren't good. Zachariah Branch, not only can he do a lot after the catch, but he can just take the top off of defense. Georgia did not need this because they already won the SEC beating Texas with the offense that was nowhere as good in terms of star power than what Texas was. Texas had 2 NFL caliber receivers, the best offensive line in college football, and a lot of good running backs, and yet Georgia was still able to beat them despite their offense not being as stacked as what the Longhorns offense was. So now you give a Georgia team coming off a down season a weapon like Zachariah Branch. this is going to be one of the moves that helps Georgia continue their dominance over the SEC. I keep hearing talk about what's the possibility of Georgia finishing 9-3? I doubt that happens. Last season was the worst that we will ever see Georgia be under Kirby Smart. And yet, even when they were in wounded animal mode, they were still able to fight with their backs against the wall, and they were able to punch themselves out of a corner that a lot of us kind of doubted they would be able to get out of because of how great of a coach Kirby Smart is. So getting Zachariah Branch fixes Georgia's biggest problem on offense last year. Well, two of their biggest problems. I didn't really see him have too much of an issue with drops at USC. And now he adds dynamicism and explosiveness to a Georgia offense that was in desperate need of it last season. Now with Zachariah Branch, Georgia's offense is going to look entirely different this year because this is just instant offense. You just get Zachariah Branch the ball in his hands, rather if it's on special teams or you just find creative ways to get him involved on offense. He's one of these kinds of cats that has Tavon Austin, DeAnthony Thomas-like ability. His speed is something that you can't really prepare for until you see it in person. And he is one of those guys that once he gets going, he can completely break a game open for you. Georgia fans know what it's like to get dominated by just one receiver when you went up against Alabama last year and Ryan Williams was just pulling off all kinds of these miraculous plays. You lost that game because of how good Ryan Williams was. Zachariah Branch, he's not Ryan Williams per se in terms of skill set, but he has that kind of ability to impact the game in that kind of way for you. So when I saw that Zachariah Branch transferred to Georgia, I was like, man, them doggone dogs, man, they just keep on finding ways to do it. They just keep on finding ways to continue to dominate the SEC. Look, I think Texas might get it done this year, but I'm not counting out those dogs, and Zachariah Branch is a huge reason why. And with the questions that people have about Gunnar Stockton, one thing that helps him is that he doesn't need to be the most talented if you give him a great supporting cast. That's what made Sir Stetson Bennett, the mailman, so effective because he just had a bunch of weapons to throw the football to. And when you got a guy like Zachariah Branch, it's not too hard to get him the ball. Just find a way to throw it to him and let that brother work in the open field. I can't wait to see what Zachariah Branch does at Georgia this year. This was one of the biggest pickups in the transfer portal by any team this year, and I believe he's going to have one of the biggest impact out of the transfer portal that we see this season.